What if the choices you're making right now are silently shaping your fate? And there's no escaping the consequences. Picture this: a single decision, ignoring your inner voice, crushing someone's hope, or betraying trust, sets off an invisible force that Carl Jung called psychic compensation. It's not divine punishment. It's a brutal, precise balancing act of the universe. And it never forgives. 6 specific acts. Welcome to Jung Psyche Hub, where we uncover the hidden truths of the human psyche through Carl Jung's wisdom. In this video, you'll discover the 6 unforgivable transgressions that trigger relentless psychological karma, how they show up in your life, and the steps to break free by living authentically. Buckle up. This journey will change how you see justice, karma, and yourself. Let's dive in. Have you ever felt a quiet nudge inside, warning you not to make that choice, take that job, or trust that person, but you ignored it, and everything fell apart? That's not just bad luck. It's what Carl Jung called psychic compensation, an invisible force in your psyche that balances the scales when you stray from your authentic self. It's the universe's way of keeping score, not with lightning bolts or divine wrath, but with the natural consequences of living out of alignment with who you truly are. In this chapter, we're diving into Carl Jung's concept of psychic compensation, how it works as psychological karma, and why ignoring your inner voice creates a debt that life always collects. Let's unpack this. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of the human mind, believed that every person has an authentic self, the core of who you are, beneath the masks you wear for the world. This self speaks through intuition, that gut feeling that whispers what's right or wrong for you. But when you betray that voice, choosing money over meaning, approval over truth, or safety over courage, you create an imbalance in your psyche. Carl Jung called this imbalance the shadow, the hidden part of you that holds your fears, insecurities, and suppressed desires. When you ignore your authentic self, the shadow grows, and psychic compensation kicks in to restore balance. Think of it like a cosmic accountant. Every choice against your truth adds to a debt, and life will demand payment, often in ways you never expect. Let's bring this to life with a story. Meet Emma, a 8-year-old CEO of a marketing firm. Emma was ambitious, driven, and admired by her peers. But deep down, she always wanted to be a teacher, to inspire young minds. Her gut told her to pursue that path, but she silenced it, chasing promotions and wealth instead. To climb the corporate ladder, Emma cut corners, misleading clients, overworking her team, and ignoring ethical red flags. At first, it paid off: a corner office, a 6-figure salary, a life that screamed success. But the cracks started to show. She couldn't sleep, haunted by a nagging emptiness. Her team began to resent her, and a major client exposed her shady practices, leading to a public scandal. Emma's empire crumbled, and she was left with a question: how did I get here? Carl Jung would say it was psychic compensation at work. Her betrayal of her authentic self created a debt, and life collected it through loss and disillusionment. Why does psychic compensation matter? Because it's not about punishment, it's about alignment. Carl Jung believed that the psyche naturally seeks wholeness, what he called individuation. When you live against your truth, you disrupt this process, and your unconscious mind steps in to correct the course. It might show up as self-sabotage, like Emma's poor decisions that seemed logical at the time, or it could be external consequences, like losing relationships or opportunities. The shadow doesn't let you off the hook. It ensures that ignoring your inner voice comes with a price, Let's break it down. Psychic compensation works through internal chaos. When you betray your authentic self, you feel restless, empty, or disconnected, even if everything looks perfect on the outside. Emma's sleepless nights were her psyche screaming for attention. External consequences. Your choices ripple outward, affecting relationships, careers, or health. Emma's unethical decisions cost her reputation and trust. The shadow's revenge. The parts of yourself you suppress, your values, dreams, or fears don't vanish. They fester in the unconscious, influencing your life in destructive ways, like bad decisions or toxic relationships. Here's a real-world moment you might recognize. You're offered a job that pays well but feels wrong. Maybe it clashes with your values or pulls you away from your passions. Your gut says, don't take it. But you do, chasing the paycheck. Months later, you're miserable, stuck in a role that drains you. That's psychic compensation at play, your psyche signaling that you've strayed from your truth. Carl Jung would say, this isn't random. It's your shadow demanding you realign with your authentic self. So, how do you avoid this debt? Start by listening to your inner voice. It's not always loud. It might be a quiet unease, a fleeting thought, or a dream that keeps recurring. Emma ignored her dream of teaching, and it cost her. But when she faced her shadow, acknowledging her greed and fear of failure, she started to heal. She left the corporate world, took a teaching course, and began volunteering at a community center. It wasn't easy, but it brought her peace. Carl Jung's Individuation teaches us that aligning with your authentic self isn't just about avoiding consequences. It's about building a life that feels whole. Here's a practical step next time you face a big decision. Pause and ask, what does my gut say? Is this true to who I am? Write down your thoughts. And don't rush. That pause could save you from a debt you'll pay later. Carl Jung believed that facing your shadow, your doubts, fears, and desires is the first step to living authentically and dodging psychic compensation. Before we move to the 6 unforgivable acts, ask yourself, when was the last time you ignored your inner voice? What happened? Hold that thought. Because up next, we'll uncover the first 2 acts that trigger relentless psychological karma and how they show up in your life. You've heard about psychic compensation, the universe's way of balancing the scales when you stray from your truth. But what happens when that betrayal cuts deeper, when you turn your back on your own soul or shatter the sacred innocence of another? These are the first 2 unforgivable acts that Carl Jung warned trigger relentless psychological karma. In this chapter, we're diving into what it means to betray your authentic self and destroy someone else's light, how these choices ripple through your life, and why they come with a cosmic price tag. Let's get into it. 1. Betraying your soul. Deep inside, there's a voice that knows who you are, your authentic self. As Carl Jung called it, it's the part of you that whispers what's right, what's true, what aligns with your deepest values. Betraying your soul happens when you silence that voice, choosing external rewards, money, status, approval over what you know is right. It's not one big moment, it's the small compromises that stack up. You take the job that feels wrong because it pays well. You stay silent when you should speak up because it's easier. You chase someone else's dream, ignoring your own. Each choice creates a crack in your psyche, and Carl Jung warned that these cracks grow into a chasm. Let's meet Sarah, a 29-year-old graphic designer with a passion for art. She dreamed of opening her own studio, but her family pushed her toward a stable corporate job. Herr Gut screamed, "This isn't you." But she ignored it, chasing security. Years later, Sarah was successful on paper promotions, a fancy apartment, but she felt hollow. She stopped creating art, lost her spark, and sank into anxiety. When a colleague betrayed her by stealing a project, it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization she'd been betraying herself for years. Carl Jung would say, Sarah's emptiness was psychic compensation. Her soul demanded payment for being ignored. The shadow, her suppressed creativity and courage, manifested as self-doubt and burnout. Why is betraying your soul so costly? Because it's a rejection of your core. Carl Jung believed that living against your authentic self creates a psychic debt. You might fool the world, but your unconscious keeps score. That nagging emptiness, those recurring dreams of being lost, or that sudden career collapse, they're your shadow, reminding you of who you're meant to be. The longer you ignore it, the louder it gets, until life forces you to face it. 2. Destroying innocence now. Let's talk about the second unforgivable act, destroying someone's innocence. Carl Jung saw innocence not as naivety, but as a sacred quality: trust, hope, the belief in goodness. It's the light in a child's eyes, the optimism of someone who still believes in second chances. When you deliberately shatter that light through betrayal, cruelty, or manipulation, you commit a sin against the divine spark in another. This isn't accidental harm, it's choosing to dim someone's belief in the world's goodness. Consider James, a 35-year-old entrepreneur. His best friend, Mia, trusted him with her startup idea, pouring her heart into their shared vision. But James, driven by envy, pitched the idea to investors as his own, leaving Mia devastated. Her trust in others crumbled. She stopped sharing her dreams, fearing more betrayal. James thought he'd won, but his victory was hollow. His new venture failed when partners sensed his dishonesty, and friends distanced themselves. Sensing his lack of integrity, Carl Jung would say, this is psychological karma. James's destruction of Mia's innocence mirrored his own inner darkness, and his shadow, his envy and insecurity, brought isolation. Destroying innocence doesn't just hurt the victim, it darkens the world. Carl Jung believed this act violates the sacred connection between humans, triggering psychic compensation that's both precise and brutal. The betrayer often faces their own loss of trust through broken relationships, betrayal by others, or a life drained of meaning. James's isolation wasn't random. It was his shadow reflecting back the pain he caused. How these acts connect, both betraying your soul and destroying innocence, stem from the shadow parts of yourself you refuse to face. When you ignore your authentic self, you're more likely to harm others, because you've lost your moral compass. Carl Jung's Individuation teaches that facing your shadow, your fears, insecurities, or envy is the only way to avoid these acts. Sarah began healing by returning to her art, listening to her inner voice. James, however, doubled down on his lies, and his shadow grew stronger, pulling him deeper into loneliness. What can you do? Listen to your soul. Pause before making choices. Ask, does this feel true to me? Journal your thoughts to reconnect with your authentic self. Protect innocence before you act. Consider the impact. Are you uplifting someone's light or dimming it? Choose kindness over control. These acts aren't just mistakes, they're choices that ripple through your psyche and the world. Ask yourself, when have you ignored your inner voice or hurt someone's trust? Hold that thought. Because next, we'll explore 2 more unforgivable acts, manipulating the vulnerable and blind pride, and their devastating consequences. We've explored how betraying your soul and destroying innocence trigger the relentless force of psychological karma. But what happens when you exploit someone who can't fight back or let pride blind you to your own flaws. These are the next two unforgivable acts Carl Jung warned about. Rooted in the shadow, the hidden parts of yourself you refuse to face. In this chapter, we'll dive into manipulating the vulnerable and the destructive power of blind pride, how they disrupt your psyche and others' lives, and why the universe demands accountability. Let's break it down. 1. Manipulating the vulnerable. There's a sacred trust in human relationships, especially with those who can't fully protect themselves, children, the elderly, or people drowning in grief. Carl Jung saw vulnerability as a call for compassion, not exploitation, but some people see it as an opportunity. Manipulating the vulnerable, exploiting their trust, weakness, or desperation for personal gain is one of the gravest sins against divine justice. It's not just about the harm caused, it's about betraying the natural order of human connection, where the strong uplift the weak, not prey on them. Let's meet David, a 42-year-old financial advisor. He built a reputation helping elderly clients manage their retirement savings. But behind his charming smile, David saw dollar signs in their trust. He convinced an 80-year-old widow, Margaret, to invest her life savings in a risky scheme. Knowing it would benefit him more than her, Margaret lost everything, forced to live in poverty. Her trust in others shattered. David thought he'd gotten away with it, more commissions, a bigger house. But the cracks appeared. His own son, sensing his father's dishonesty, grew distant. Clients began questioning his integrity, and his business crumbled. Carl Jung would say this is psychic compensation at work. David's shadow, his greed and lack of empathy, demanded payment through isolation and loss. Why is manipulating the vulnerable so unforgivable? Because it violates a sacred bond. Carl Jung believed that trust, especially from those who have no choice but to rely on others, is tied to the divine spark in humanity. Exploiting it creates a psychic debt that ripples outward. The consequences might not be immediate, but they're precise. David's isolation wasn't random. It mirrored the loneliness he inflicted on Margaret. The shadow ensures that those who exploit vulnerability often end up vulnerable themselves, surrounded by people they can't trust, just as they broke trust. 2. Blind pride. Pride can be healthy, a sense of accomplishment or self-worth, but Carl Jung warned of a darker kind, blind pride. The belief that you're above others, untouchable, or always right. This pride blinds you to your flaws, shuts out feedback, and turns others into tools or threats. It's the shadow's arrogance, convincing you that you don't need to grow because you've already arrived. But life has a way of humbling the proud, and the fall is never accidental. Consider Rachel, a 5-year-old startup founder who believed she was destined for greatness. Her confidence inspired her team, but it morphed into arrogance. She dismissed her co-founder's warnings about a flawed business model, calling him negative. She ignored market data, convinced her vision was flawless. When her startup crashed, costing her team their jobs, Rachel blamed everyone but herself: investors, employees, even the economy. But deep down, she felt the sting of her own denial. Her shadow, her insecurity masked as superiority, had sabotaged her. Carl Jung's psychic compensation ensured her pride led to a public fall, forcing her to face the flaws she'd ignored. Blind pride is costly because it cuts you off from reality. Carl Jung believed that refusing to see your shadow, your limitations, mistakes, or need for growth creates an imbalance that life corrects. The prouder you are, the harder the fall. Rachel's collapse wasn't just financial, it was a reckoning with her self-image. The universe, through psychic compensation, ensures that pride meets humility, often at the worst possible moment. How these acts connect. Both manipulating the vulnerable and blind pride stem from an unintegrated shadow. When you refuse to face your greed or insecurity, you exploit others or inflate your ego to avoid the truth. Carl Jung's Individuation calls for acknowledging these flaws to live authentically. David could have chosen empathy over profit. Rachel could have embraced feedback over arrogance. Instead, their shadows grew, triggering consequences that mirrored their actions. David's isolation reflected Margaret's, and Rachel's failure exposed her denial. What can you do? Protect the vulnerable before acting. Ask, am I uplifting or exploiting? Choose to honor trust, especially from those who can't defend themselves. Check your pride pause when you feel superior. Ask, what am I avoiding about myself? Seek feedback and be open to being wrong. These acts aren't just mistakes, they're choices that disrupt your psyche and the world's balance. Ask yourself, have you ever taken advantage of someone's trust or let pride blind you? Hold that thought. Because next, we'll uncover the final two unforgivable acts, denying your shadow and crushing hope, and their devastating toll. We've uncovered how betraying your soul, destroying innocence, manipulating the vulnerable, and blind pride trigger the relentless force of psychological karma. Now, we're diving into the final two unforgivable acts. Carl Jung warned about denying your shadow and crushing someone's hope. These choices, rooted in the refusal to face your inner truth, don't just harm you, they dim the light of possibility in others. In this chapter, we'll explore how these acts disrupt your psyche and the world around you, and why the universe demands accountability through psychic compensation. Let's get into it. 1. Denying your shadow. Your shadow, as Carl Jung described, is the hidden part of you, your fears, flaws, and desires you pretend don't exist. It's the anger you bury, the selfishness you hide, the doubts you push away to seem good. Denying your shadow isn't about being evil, it's about refusing to accept your full humanity. When you reject these parts, they don't disappear, they go underground, growing stronger in your unconscious and sabotaging your life in ways you don't see coming. Carl Jung believed that denying your shadow creates a dangerous imbalance, inviting psychic compensation to force you to face what you've ignored. Let's meet Alex, a 30-year-old social worker who prided herself on being endlessly kind. She suppressed her anger, believing it was wrong, and always put others first, even when it drained her. But her shadow, her unacknowledged resentment, started leaking out. She became passive-aggressive, snapping at colleagues or withdrawing from friends. When a client criticized her work, Alex exploded in a rare outburst, damaging her reputation. The fallout wasn't just external. She felt like a fraud, haunted by nightmares of being exposed. Carl Jung would say this was her shadow taking revenge. By denying her anger, Alex let it control her unconsciously, leading to self-sabotage and isolation. Psychic compensation ensured her suppressed truth surfaced, no matter how hard she tried to hide it. Why is denying your shadow so costly? Because it splits you in two. Carl Jung's concept of individuation is about integrating your shadow to become whole, but denial keeps you fragmented. The parts you reject, anger, fear, or selfishness, manifest as chaos, bad decisions, broken relationships, or even physical stress. The universe, through psychic compensation, forces a confrontation, often through crises that expose what you've buried. Alex's outburst wasn't random. It was her shadow, demanding to be seen. 2. Crushing hope. Hope is the spark that keeps us going. The belief that tomorrow can be better, that pain is temporary, that dreams are possible. Carl Jung saw hope as a sacred force, tied to our connection with meaning and purpose. Crushing someone's hope, deliberately convincing them their dreams are worthless or their struggles are futile, is a sin against this spark. It's not just about hurting someone, it's about stealing their will to keep going, dimming the light that fuels their potential and the world's. Consider Maria, a 5-year-old teacher who scoffed at her student. Liam, when he shared his dream of becoming a musician, "You're not talented enough. Stick to something practical," she told him, projecting her own regret for abandoning her artistic dreams. Liam, crushed, gave up music and took a job he hated, carrying a quiet resentment. Maria thought she was being realistic, but her shadow, her bitterness and unfulfilled dreams drove her to dim Liam's light. Years later, Maria watched her own daughter abandon her passions after similar discouragement from others. The emptiness Maria felt wasn't coincidence. It was psychic compensation. By crushing Liam's hope, she invited a world where hope was scarce, even for her family. Crushing hope is unforgivable because it robs the world of possibility. Carl Jung believed that hope connects us to our divine potential, and destroying it creates a ripple effect, reducing the collective light. The consequences are brutal. Those who crush hope often find themselves hopeless. Surrounded by cynicism, they helped create. Maria's loss of her daughter's spark mirrored the damage she inflicted on Liam. How these acts connect, denying your shadow and crushing hope, both stem from refusing to face your inner truth. When you reject your flaws, like Alex's anger or Maria's bitterness, you project them onto others, often by dimming their light to avoid your own darkness. Carl Jung's Individuation teaches that embracing your shadow, acknowledging your imperfections, frees you to uplift others instead of tearing them down. Alex could have owned her anger to set healthier boundaries. Maria could have nurtured Liam's dream to heal her own regrets. Instead, their shadows grew, triggering psychic compensation that mirrored their actions. What can you do? Face your shadow, acknowledge your flaws, anger, jealousy, or fear. Journal about them or talk to a trusted friend. Ask, what am I hiding from myself? Nurture hope before you speak. Ask, am I inspiring or discouraging? Choose words that lift others up, especially when they're vulnerable. These acts aren't just mistakes, they're choices that fracture your psyche and the world's potential. Ask yourself, have you ever denied a part of yourself or dimmed someone's hope? Hold that thought, because next, we'll explore how to break this cycle through individuation and live authentically to avoid karma's toll. You've seen how betraying your soul, destroying innocence, manipulating the vulnerable, blind pride, and denying your shadow or crushing hope trigger psychological karma, leaving a trail of chaos in your life and others and place. But here's the good news. You don't have to stay trapped in that cycle. Carl Jung's concept of individuation offers a way out, a path to integrate your shadow, live authentically, and align with your true self to avoid the cosmic debt of psychic compensation. In this final chapter, we'll explore how to break free from these unforgivable acts, reclaim your power, and build a life that's unshakable. Let's dive in and discover how to become the person you were always meant to be. What is individuation? Carl Jung described individuation as the lifelong journey of becoming whole by embracing all parts of yourself, your strengths, your shadow, your dreams, and even your flaws. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. When you betray your soul or harm others, you're living out of alignment with this process, creating imbalances that psychic compensation corrects through pain or loss. Individuation flips the script by facing your shadow and listening to your inner voice. You break the cycle of karma and build a life rooted in truth. This isn't just healing, it's transformation. Let's bring this to life with a story. Meet Lynn, a 32-year-old accountant who spent years denying her true calling as an artist. She suppressed her creativity to please her family, taking a safe job that left her feeling empty. Lynn's shadow, her unexpressed passion and resentment, manifested as burnout and strained relationships. She snapped at loved ones, felt disconnected, and even discouraged a colleague's dream, mirroring her own suppressed hope. But a breaking point came when she hit rock bottom after a health scare. Inspired by Carl Jung's teachings, Lynn began her individuation journey. She faced her shadow by admitting her fear of failure and her anger at herself for giving up her art. She started small, sketching in her free time, taking an art class, and setting boundaries with her family. Over time, Lynn opened her own studio, not only finding peace, but inspiring others to pursue their dreams. Her transformation didn't just heal her, it broke the cycle of pain she'd been perpetuating. How to break the cycle? Individuation is about aligning with your authentic self and integrating your shadow to avoid the 6 unforgivable acts. Here's how you can start, with 3 practical steps rooted in Carl Jung's wisdom. 1. Listen to your inner voice. Your authentic self speaks through intuition, those gut feelings, quiet nudges, or recurring dreams. Lynn ignored her passion for art, and it cost her peace. To reconnect, pause before big decisions and ask, does this feel true to who I am? Journal your thoughts, or meditate to hear that voice clearly. Even 5 minutes a day can help you tune in. When you listen, you avoid betraying your soul and the karmic debt that follows. 2. Face your shadow. The shadow holds your fears, insecurities, and suppressed desires like Lynn's fear of failure or resentment. Denying it leads to self-sabotage or harm to others, like crushing hope or manipulating the vulnerable. To integrate it, name one flaw you're avoiding. Maybe it's jealousy or anger. Write about it honestly. What am I afraid this says about me? By owning it, you weaken its power to control you unconsciously. Lynn's honesty about her resentment freed her to create again. 3. Set boundaries and pursue purpose. Individuation means protecting your energy and aligning with your purpose. Lynn set boundaries with her family, saying no to their expectations to focus on her art. Ask yourself, what drains me? What lights me up? Say no to relationships or jobs that dim your spark, and take one step toward a dream that excites you. This could be signing up for a class, starting a side project, or simply saying, I deserve to live my truth. These choices shield you from pride or exploitation and nurture hope in yourself and others. Why this matters? Breaking the cycle through individuation isn't just about avoiding karma. It's about building a life that's resilient and meaningful. Carl Jung believed that when you live authentically, you not only heal yourself, but also uplift the world. Lynn's art studio didn't just fulfill her, it inspired her colleague to chase their own dream, creating a ripple of hope. By integrating your shadow, you stop projecting pain onto others. No more crushing hope or manipulating trust. You become a light, not a shadow. In a world that needs both, the cost of not acting. If you keep denying your shadow or ignoring your truth, the psychic compensation will keep coming through broken relationships, lost opportunities, or that nagging emptiness. But when you choose individuation, you take back control. You don't need to wait for a crisis like Lynn's health scare. Start now. With one small act of courage, listen to your gut. Own a flaw, or take a step toward your purpose. Each choice aligns you with your authentic self, shielding you from the 6 unforgivable acts. Your next step. Before we wrap up, Ask yourself, what's one way you're ready to live more authentically? Maybe it's admitting a fear, setting a boundary, or chasing a dream you've buried. Hold that thought, because in our outro, we'll bring it all together with a powerful call to embrace your true self and let the universe guide you forward. We've journeyed through the 6 unforgivable acts: betraying your soul, destroying innocence, manipulating the vulnerable, blind pride, denying your shadow, and crushing hope, and seen how they trigger the relentless force of psychological karma. But here's the truth. You hold the power to break this cycle. Carl Jung's individuation isn't just a theory, it's a call to face your shadow. Listen to your inner voice and become the authentic, unshakable you. Those who hurt you, or themselves, they're caught in their own darkness, paying the price of their choices. But you're rising, aligning with your truth, and becoming a light in a world that needs it. So, what's your next step? Start today. Listen to that quiet voice. Own one flaw, or take a bold step toward your purpose. Share your story in the comments. What's one way you're choosing authenticity over karma's debt? Your courage could inspire someone else. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Jung Psyche Hub for more insights to unlock your inner power. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a video. Divine justice isn't here to punish. It's here to guide you to your truest self. Embrace it, and let the universe align with you. See you in the next one.